This jacket feels huge. Is it huge?
First early. Alright, so
Check 1, 2, check 1. 1. Have you ever done that before? Just ask Dad to show you. Yeah, wasn't bad. Am I 3-time state champion? I can't remember. Yeah. I am? Okay. Oh, I guess once you sort of get the bug, it's hard to get rid of it. I spent a lot of time playing tennis when I was younger, before school, during school, after school. But once racing came along, it was sort of an obsession. I was always involved from a crew perspective. Probably, I think I started crewing when I was about 13. And obviously, I enjoyed crewing, and I guess the technical side of it was pretty enjoyable for me as well. So, and then obviously once I started getting into the race car and having a drive of it, sort of the obsession took over. I guess like when you first start racing, it all comes in stages. So first stage is I guess you get in a race car, you shit your pants, and you putt around at 40 kilometers an hour because the vibration, the noise, the violence of the reactions are all so different, and you really have nothing to compare that to. There's really nothing else to compare it to. So it's a very unique experience when you first get in the car, and then you start getting more comfortable with that, and you start getting to the point where you can actually go a bit faster, and then I guess the next stage is getting your head around believing the car will turn when you go faster, and the aero starts to actually work. So and then the next stage is actually putting that into practice with 20 other people around you. So the first time you get in a race car and you get filled in and you got to pull a tear off, that's probably a pretty interesting. That'd be up there with the first time you get in the car. So it's definitely a process learning how to drive these things, but it's very enjoyable, and there's not much that's similar to it than being in a race with 20 other cars. To be honest with you, whether I win 8 in a year, I still lost 8 or whatever it was, 10. So it's the same process really, unless you win. And even when you win, I guess it's the same process, but you just have a bit more enjoyment in that process, and obviously you're a lot happier when you win. So, but at the end of the day, it's still. You never drive a perfect race, so it's just a learning process, and with a bit of luck and probably less luck, but more deliberate, you should be learning more out of a loss than a win, and the goal is you need to learn to win. And last year, I just don't think we put together what we needed to in the right amount of time. I think there was some changes in different, racetrack was slightly different, tyres might have been slightly different. There was a few different factors that changed from what we did the year before, because obviously you have these tendencies when you win 8 races to stick with what you did to win 8 races, but I think last year probably we needed to move away from that a little bit quicker than what we did. Yeah, you're forever chasing the next thing. But last year we started pretty similar. We started with the same car at the start of last year that we did the year before. We had a very similar engine, and we also had one that we ran the year before. But you know, whether it be whatever the factors were that weren't the same, we didn't adapt quick enough to it. And I guess it shows there was definitely some factors that changed, because the year before essentially you had, I think there was 3 guys that won races. Myself, Callum, and Dane, I think, were the only 3 guys maybe, or there might have been a few others. But with the guy that won the most won 8, being us. And this year the guy that won the most races was, I think, 2, or and there was a lot of first time winners. Those results show that there's some inconsistency in something. So not really. I'm probably one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet. I go and play. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm just a bit of a lunatic when it comes to that, and nobody puts more pressure on me than me. And I strive to win in everything I do. So for me, if I didn't win, I need to be better. So it becomes I guess an analysis, maybe overload, and you're forever looking at every single thing that maybe could have led to a win in that situation. It's a good question. I would you're saying car-wise?
Yeah.
So where the car needs to be the best. I would have exit, because generally you can muscle a car in and you can muscle it through the center, and having the extra speed on exit helps you on entry. Yeah, of course. I don't doubt anything that we do. I'll have an opinion, but in the end, he's just as much as a lunatic about winning that I am. So in the end, we're all heading in the same direction. So whether or not it's a call that comes from me or someone else, more than it's a call because that's what was thought to be the best thing at that time. So in the end, I have no preconceived idea about what the car's going to do. And to be honest with you, I don't, as much as I want it to be as good as it can be, it doesn't bother me if it's not, because there's things you can do to manipulate the car to change where the weight is. And there's a certain extent, or there's a fair amount of that you can do in a car to make up for maybe things that you missed in setup. I probably prefer the 30-lap races. I do prefer longer races, because I feel like I probably prep myself better than others. So I know if I, not that I really ever do, but if I ever got to the point where I was tired, I would mentally, I would probably cherish. I don't know what the word is, but it would almost drive me more, because I know that everyone would be worse. I got so much going on outside of racing and inside of racing. It changes a fair amount. Depends how much we work on the race cars. Depends if I was renovating houses and doing all different stuff. But essentially, right now I'm boxing probably between 4 and 5 times a week. Yeah, there's a little bit of weights and there's some leg work in that. But yeah, then I'll also go for runs every now and then. It's like bits and pieces, but I think boxing is a good thing, because there's not many other sports that have, when you have a lapse of concentration, it has such I guess a dramatic impact where you get punched in the head, right? In a race car, you have a lapse of concentration, you crash, you cost a lot of money, right? So, there's not many other sports. You can do that in tennis and you just lose a point. Or the ramifications of lapses in concentration are probably as close to what it's going to be in a race car. I think there's so much to do with a 360 that maybe isn't that doesn't come across to a 410. I think maybe there should be like a license point system where, you know, when you do mess up, there potentially you can lose points or whatever it may be. I don't think keeping people out of the sport is maybe the way to go. I think it would be better to push them into there's a requirement to do 6 country races prior to you being in an open race, rather than saying you need to go to a lower division and work your way up. Oh no, I get very involved in it. Like I'm a project manager for a living, so you can imagine I like the list as well. Everyone knows prior to going to the racetrack, they know what they need to do for that entire night, and that's all laid out back at the workshop. So as much as Dad's still cracking the whip on the night, they already knew what they needed to do, and it's very much about having a team around you who know what they want, what they need to do, and when they need to do it without being told. Makes your life a lot easier. Yeah, I think you probably don't get a chance to maybe process it at the racetrack because you got sponsors around, and it's a funny thing. Like, we race, and the most we've won in a year was, I think it was 46% win ratio, right? So half or more than half the time you're miserable. So you've got to still be happy and have that interaction. You've got a lot of people there that are supporting you, so you need to show the respect to them, and you need to not be sooking in the trailer. But then there's until you get away from the racetrack, you can't really do that deep analysis, I guess, mentally. So as soon as you leave the racetrack, the drive home is probably where it begins, and then generally when you go to bed that night, there's plenty of thinking going on. The next day is probably, I try to do a little bit less the next day, but then probably Monday night as well becomes a pretty deep dive into almost every situation that went on in that race, during that race. But I still do that when I win anyway. But I probably just don't think about it on the exact night. So it'll be Monday when I do it rather than race night. I think the license system for where there's certain points, I think there's a certain amount of times that people can, everyone's done it. They've crashed people out, and people have been caught up in other people's incidents. But when there's certain people who do it more often than not, I think there needs to be some form of ramification for people to think about that a little bit more. That's probably the big one, and then probably more policing of any of the rules in general. You don't want anyone to be winning races with something that I don't have. To be honest with you, appreciate everything all the support from the fans and everything, but I am my own critic. I need no external validation on anything I do in my life. It is 100%. I know if I do the right thing and I win the race, that was all me. And I know if I did the wrong thing and I didn't, and it was, I made all these mistakes, well, it really doesn't matter what they say. They can slay me all they want, but I know the areas where I could have made up time or whatever it may come down to. But yeah, I'm not fussed on getting, and I'm not a big social media person, so people send me screenshots and I get a laugh out of it, and then I move on. I'm not going to get on there and reply. I don't care. I'm too busy living my life, having a good time. I think they're just uneducated. Like, I could ask them 50 questions on a race car and certain incidences, and they would have, doesn't matter what the actual outcome was, they're going to pick it, or they're going to see what they want to see. So in the end, it's just another thing that it doesn't matter to me. Like, you know, there's been plenty of times where, you know, I'll have conversations with the steward and you know, convey what I think, where I think he was wrong, but it's always a conversation. Like, I'm not going to go and yell and scream. He doesn't come and yell and scream at me. So it's just about respect. And in the end, we're not going to agree every time. So, but also, like, I'm not just going to sit by. Like, I'm here to win, and I'm going to argue my point. And if people don't like me winning, arguing my point, or basically doing anything I want, I don't care. I guess besides winning, like the feeling of winning, the feeling of when you win, the seeing your crew and how it makes them feel. I think that's a pretty joyful thing to, you know. I said to someone probably a couple of weeks ago, the first time you win, maybe the first 2 times you win, that is 100% for you. But, you know, the further along you get along, the more percentage of that win is for those people that help and put into your team. Because, you know, there's no one on this earth that could 100% work on a race car themselves, pay for the race car themselves, drive the race car themselves. You know, it doesn't happen. So no matter what you do and how much money you've got people that are helping you. And to give back to those guys is definitely a big thing. Yeah, definitely. I think, much to contrary belief, you know, we run this like a business. If it doesn't make money, then we won't go on the racetrack. Like, there's not this endless pit of money, like, you know, some people like to believe. Otherwise, you know, it's you have to build relationships, or, okay, in our team's perspective, we have to build relationships and give sponsors something back. There needs to be a return on their investment, and we try to generate as much income for the team through sponsors as we can, and then we need to look after them. So, you know, if someone's going to give you 10 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, you need to be giving them, like, we're aiming to give them back more than what they're giving us. Now, it's not going to be a cash return, but it's going to be some form of value, whether it's brand exposure or it's personnel benefits. There's a number of ways to give back, and I think you know, a lot of teams maybe don't need to do it, but I don't think it should ever be knocked at the teams that are doing it, because in the end it brings the whole sport up when you're involving these corporate companies, you know, in the same way that V8 Supercars did, and the same way that Maddington Toyota are doing for the series at the moment. You know, we've got the best series in Australia, and the reason it is because of what it is first of all because of the SEG and Dad, and second of all because these sponsors and Maddington Toyota being the key driver are pushing us into the general public rather than just the diehards. Now we're getting more exposure from TV, which is just another return to all the other sponsors that are giving to us. So it's just about understanding the value of what you're getting and what you're giving. Yeah, I hopefully there's a number of guys that come over from the East Coast. You know, it's Speedway everywhere except for WA is probably in a pretty sad state. You know, Queensland's shut, Sydney's now shut, Adelaide's shut. Avalon could do with some work. You know, Warrnambool's always great, but it's also not a you know, capital city. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that could probably in these states that need to maybe look at what WA did, you know, all those years ago, and push, whether it be government or a team of private investors together, and you know, put something back into the sport. The package is pretty similar to last year. We got the same chassis. We've got new ones. We've got, you know, the Dad's forever tweaking the engine program. So it's as much as we've got a fair few motors. It's tweaks on those engines that are like sort of the fine tuning. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And it just needs to be about me being better at what I do, and then the team in general being better at adapting to changing circumstances, I guess. Yeah, the track's an interesting one, especially the Motorplex, because there's not many other tracks that deliberately work certain parts of the racetrack. So, you know, there's a natural flow of a racetrack to go from you know, moisture to dry, and the dirt is generally packed by you know, a 650, 700 kilo race car. Whereas the Motorplex has a combination of using scarifiers, using water, and then using push utes to pack it once it's ripped. So, you know, we don't really build a cushion because the utes are, you know, 1.5 tons, and they pack it with skinny tires. So when the dirt does get turned off the actual racing surface, it's generally really fine dirt. So that probably I believe hinders us to an extent. So then what happens is the track gets ripped in certain places, maybe to try and make up for that, to try and generate more than one racing line, which I probably tend to disagree with. I think a track should just go from one direction to the other. But in the end, I'm not doing the track, and we've all got to deal with it. So I'm not making excuses. I just, you know, if it was me, I would do it different. If it was you, you'd do it different. We've all got our ideas, but in the end, we're racing at the best racetrack in Australia and have the best series with the Maddington Toyota series. So I really can't complain. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know, Mum, she's the one, you know, talking sense into Dad, and you know, and the same to me. Like, you know, because I guess it is very obsessive when you get down to this, and we're all, you know, just crazy competitive, and you know, you need someone that's a little bit level-headed, and I guess the people that do that for us are Mum and my fiancée Tina, and they're the ones that, you know, sort of maybe bring us down a touch from that lunatic level. To be honest with you, I try not to think about anything meaning more than the other. You know, I'd love to win the Australian title. I enjoy the state titles and the Warrnambool Classic, but you know, I don't go into any one race thinking I want to win this more than the other. They're all 120%. I want to win it. So yeah, you know, like the Australian title is, you know, to race with the number one for a year is, I believe, the pinnacle of our sport in Australia. But yeah, probably aside from that, like everything else is approached exactly the same. Mate, the hunger is the same every year. Like, I I want to win more than anything every single race that we go out. So, for me to say, yeah, I got more hunger than last year is probably a lie. We were working at it every night last year, and there wasn't a dull moment of us ever thinking, we sat and rested on our laurels and thinking, second place is okay. It doesn't work like that. It's win at all costs in every race.